today's guest speakers, Joleen Cronin and Emer Harrington. Joleen Cronin is a photographer and graphic designer based in Cork. Joleen's photography work is lifestyle in nature with a keen focus on food and hospitality. As an aside, Joleen is also the founder and event coordinator of the Irish Redhead Convention. Emer Harrington is a consultant specialising in content and communication strategy, copywriting and editing on items like blogs and press releases. Emer also provides social media management and training and workshops for companies or teams. Together, Joleen and Emer are going to present to you this morning, so welcome both of you.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, how are you?
I'm Emer.
And I'm Joleen, and thank you very much for having us.
Delighted to be here this morning. So we're going to be talking to you about content marketing. So as Adriana said, my background is more in the written side of things. So whether that's your website, writing your media materials, your social media, anything to do with copy and writing, actually creating your ideas. And then Joleen.
Well, what I do, I suppose, is I help you kind of translate those ideas into something that's visual. So my super skill is probably making people feel comfortable in front of the camera in particular. So I love photography and video. The graphic design information, that was back in the day, as was the Redhead Convention. So I've had kind of like a whole vast amount of different experience. But generally, I see myself as a visual communicator.
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing this morning is talking about both elements of those. I'm going to start talking about how you begin with it all, kind of creating your ideas and turning it into content, and then Joleen's going to talk a bit more about the visual side.
Yeah,
great. So to get started, I suppose, what is content marketing would be a great place to begin. So content marketing is really anything that you create online to promote your business, whether that's written, video, images, audio, anything at all that's created to build awareness of your brand and your business. Now, typically when people think of marketing, they might think of selling, so going straight in with, here's my product or service, here's an advert for it, please buy it. And that's a really important element of marketing and selling, but a common mistake that a lot of businesses make is they just focus on advertising and they just focus on creating the ad to sell the product. And if you go in to sell your product or service without any relationship built with your client, without understanding who your customer base is, without doing any research into them, what they need and what they want, and without establishing trust and connection with your audience, your potential customer, it's going to be very hard to make that sale. Because I don't know if any of you here have ever tried to sell something to someone who isn't even aware they need it or isn't looking for it. It's a lot more work than selling something to someone who is already aware of the problem they have, the solution they're looking for, and that you're the provider of it, who actually comes to your door looking for your product or service. So it's a lot easier to make that sale than it is to go out and convince someone that they need you in the first place. So the role of content marketing is, before anyone ever gets to the point of, right, I'm ready to buy, actually building that foundation, building that relationship with them so that you have a warm, engaged audience who, when it comes to making the sale, are ready to buy and ready to buy from you. So that's what we're talking about with content marketing.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add there?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Thanks, Joleen.
She's doing a great job.
That's a great start. Fantastic. So just to kick it off, wondering kind of who we have in this room. Social media is probably where a lot of focus of content marketing goes. So, who here is on social media and has a kind of a presence online, just for your business specifically? Show of hands.
Probably.
Okay, so quite a lot of you, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of fairly active, so by active I mean if you're there every, let's say, week or so, how many? Again. Okay, so still quite a few, that's great. So I'm just going to ask for a little bit of feedback, and I'm kind of like what I call popcorn style feedback. You get the popping kernels, it's like one word, maybe two, but if you wouldn't mind capturing some of these, Joleen, if you are on social media and you do create content for your business, what are the kind of challenges that you find with it? Now, if it's something you're totally comfortable with, that's brilliant. This will be a very short presentation. But if there are things that you kind of find challenging about it, that puts you off about it, if you maybe throw some of those out, if anyone's brave enough to give me one.
Finding time to do it.
Finding time, brilliant.
Time.
Yeah, finding time, because you're likely running a small business. It might just be you or a small team. And with all the different many hats that you're wearing in your business, where do you even find the time? Exactly. Anything else? Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. That's great. You're part of this too. Absolutely. Being consistent. So anybody recognize that, sometimes you're on a roll, you have a great creative streak, you have loads of ideas, you create a few posts, share them, and then it just tapers off. Maybe you don't get a great response or something else takes your focus and yeah, it all dies off again. So yeah, a few heads nodding. Anything else?
Audience spread.
Say that again?
Audience spread. Who's your audience?
Who is your audience?
Okay.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah,
knowing your audience.
Knowing your audience. Yeah. And that can be as clear as I actually have no idea who I'm even speaking to, or it can be I think I know my audience, but when I put up stuff online, there's no response to it, so
or
there's
how
a
to
disconnect.
Speak to them. How
yeah.
to speak to that
So
audience
sometimes you
specifically.
actually know who's your audience is, but when you actually create content, you don't get any response, so there's a disconnect. Yeah. Okay, and anything else here?
Depends on your product.
Say that again?
Depends on your product.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So what will I put down for that?
What would you, when you say it depends on your product?
Maybe the right messaging for your product. Like what's the right messaging?
Yeah, what you should say. Yeah.
Okay, what
Knowing
you should
knowing
say.
what to say. We'll
Knowing
put
what
down
to
knowing what to say. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we'll catch all this in the next 10
We
minutes.
will. Yeah.
Choosing what to pick, to what to put up, of all the things you've done in the last, exciting things you've done.
Having so much to say and what to
narrowing
choose,
it down.
narrowing it down. Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose finding the best.
Yeah.
There's kind of a few there for us to focus in on. Is there anything else we want to add into that? Okay, I think we'll work away with that. So,
Cool. All right.
So really, when we talk about online marketing, which is what we're talking about with content marketing, I think one of the really important things to remember is that it's the same as old-fashioned or traditional marketing, really. So if you have a bricks and mortar business and you are well established and have customers coming into your door, you're already marketing all the time. And whether it's kind of official taking out adverts or just how you interact with your public or whoever your customer is, you're already engaged in marketing. And it's the same online as it is in person. We can often get intimidated with the idea of social media and marketing because we think of it as something different, but it's not. Consumers behave in the same way, really. It's just a different setting online as it is in person. So if you have a news agent, for example, you already know why you put the picture of the ice cream cone in the window. It's because when people are walking across on a day like today, past your window, that's going to bring them into the shop. And you already know why you have the lotto and the sweets up on the counter. It's because when they come into the shop and they get what they need, they're the eye-catching things that they're going to buy on a whim when they're about to walk out the door. And why would you do those things? Because you understand your customer and how your customer behaves. And it's the very same whether you're doing in-person advertising, online advertising. Once you understand how your customer thinks and how they behave, you will begin to know how to communicate and market to them to the point where you don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just a given. It's how your business operates. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about how that works online, similarly to how it works in a bricks and mortar business. So what we're going to do to make this easier, because I find it is easier when you have a real example, is we're going to look at a real business. So we're going to take a case study of a real business, because otherwise you're just talking about theory and we want to put it into practice. So we're in this beautiful setting today. So what better business to choose than a garden centre? So we're going to choose a garden centre. And my lovely assistant, Daisy, is here to help us. So thanks, Joleen.
No problem.
So I'm going to flip this over for a moment and
There you go. So I am now the garden centre.
yeah, so I want you to get your garden centre hat on, which you've
I've got
done.
it.
Fantastic.
Got it.
And I'm going to ask a little bit of help here because the most important place, as I've just said to begin, when you're marketing, is to think about who your customer is,
Okay.
who your audience is. Now, a lot of the time we think we know our audience, but there's always an opportunity to go deeper. So we're going to figure out who our customer is for our garden centre.
Okay.
So let's start with their demographics, okay? When we're thinking about our customer, do we have kind of a rough age profile? No cheating from the back now, they already know. Okay.
A rough age profile. Well, I think I'd start first with the interest profile. Like, I mean, there would be people who'd be interested in gardening, wouldn't they? No? No.
We'll start with the demographics anyway. So give us a rough kind of age profile.
Okay, so I would say probably somebody maybe 30s plus.
Okay, so
Roughly.
right,
Maybe
we'll
who'd be
say
interested in garden centres.
So 30s plus, and when I say
Yeah.
age profile, I'm not looking for adults age 18 to 65. We want to kind of go as narrow as we can. So
Yeah.
we're kind of saying 30 plus, but let's say kind of 30 to
30 to,
6.
I'd say 80.
Yeah.
80.
So we'll go
I
30
think so.
plus, that's
Yeah.
5 plus, so we'll stick with that. But generally speaking, we're not creating content for like the TikTok generation here. We're talking to people who are, kind of the over 30 group, we'll say, who maybe have their homes and gardens,
Families.
right? Or do we have kind of a gender profile typically? Now, I'm sure both come, but are we leaning one way or the other, do you think, Daisy?
I would think that we're probably maybe leaning towards the female audience. Maybe, moms, people who've got a little bit of time on their hands to do, not that moms have times on their hands.
I know, excuse me. So you might have both, but what you need to think about
I
with
would
your
say
business
possibly more
is,
female.
okay, so we might lean towards, because probably both men and women like gardening, but who might spend more time at the garden centre or looking for flowers or thinking about their garden plan or asking for help with
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
Yeah, so it might be. Okay, so just for the purpose of marketing, we'll say more female audience. Okay, so you hit the nail on the head with an interest in.
Definitely with an interest in gardening.
That would be a good
the
place to start.
outdoors.
Okay, so this is where we can go a bit deeper, okay? Because yes, interest in gardening, but like, all right, so that's a given. What else do we know about them? So what else might someone interested in gardening be interested in?
Nature, coffee, meeting friends.
Coffee, yeah, friends. Anything else?
Help me out here, lads.
Biodiversity.
Biodiversity, absolutely, yeah. They have an interest in the environment. They want to help
Yeah.
the bees. get
What's
some nice
also really
plants.
important if you want to redesign your garden? What's the most important thing you need? Time and money. Yeah, okay. Excellent. Now we're getting somewhere because you can love gardening and look, you can have all the plans you want, but you need both of those things.
Someone help you decide what to get.
Someone help you decide. Well, and we're
Exactly.
going to get into that. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay, so one quick question. I love gardening. Why wouldn't I just go down? There's a rack of plants outside Aldi in Middleton. Why don't I buy them there? Why would I want to come? No, but honestly, why would I come here? Why is Daniel still have a business? They're $3.99. Sorry. Advice, yeah. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so we've got advice,
Quality.
quality. What else was it? Experience.
And also supporting local business.
Great staff, fantastic. I like that from the back, yeah. Supporting local business. We had, yeah. The range, okay. So we've got loads. All right, now it's all coming out. So your values, your customers' values, what do they care about? You're speaking to people who care about, I apologize for the writing. I don't type a lot, I don't write with a pen, but advice, quality, experience, the local business staff, the range, they care about these things. So once you start to bring the values into your marketing, you're getting somewhere. So now we're moving on to, okay, when it comes to actually their garden and their home, like if you're going to put effort into your garden, you care about it as a space. You care about it, whether it's somewhere to relax, to socialize with your friends, to play with your kids, whatever you want from that space, you care about it, okay? So they care about their garden and their home, okay? We know that much about them, okay? This is something they're willing to invest in.
People.
So lastly, there's 2 more areas that are really important to focus on, okay? The first is when it comes to the garden, and now we know they care about it, what are the problems they're experiencing? What are the challenges that they're having? And you kind of touched on it there, looking for help with. So why don't they love gardening? They can just go and sort it out themselves, but what do they need help with? Why do they need to come to a garden centre?
They need advice.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I think they can also learn the trends
So
as well when they come to the garden
problems.
centre. Yeah.
Yeah, so problems. They need ideas. Ideas, knowledge lacking. Any other problems there? They need a
What
plan.
did you say?
Yeah,
Plan.
need a plan. Fantastic. Daniel, anything else?
I think you're doing fairly well now.
Any other problems they have?
Seasonal change.
Seasonal plants?
Yeah.
What about, like, does anyone know what kind of soil they have at home? I don't know. What soil?
And what
kind of, yeah.
plants would grow better, say,
Yeah.
near the coast?
Sun, soil, all these kind of things. Yeah, but these are the problems you're solving, right? So they're lacking in knowledge. They need a plan. They don't know what's seasonal. They need to know about what you can plant in certain sun and shade and soil, all that, right? And then the last area we'll focus on is the happy stuff. What do they want? So we know who this person is, and some of you in the room might be this person. If you're a customer of a garden centre, what are you looking for? What's the dream? What's the visual? What's the end result you're looking to create?
Well, it's examples, it's visions, it's examples of everyone you've seen. Some of the beautiful gardens you can live up in.
Yeah, a beautiful garden, okay. So we want
Inspiration.
inspiration. Okay. A beautiful garden. Anything else when you think about your garden, what you want? And it can just be descriptions, words, doesn't have to be.
Pollinators.
Yeah. Beautiful. What was that? Color. Yeah, lovely. And anything else here? Serenity. Oh, beautiful. Serenity. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we'll just look at this, just look at this profile now. So we might have started out this going, all right, yeah, I know my audience, people who like plants, right? But now what do we do? And we're going to give her a name. Let's call her Daisy. Let's call her Daisy. Okay, so Daisy.
So I'm 30.
I don't know if I believe that or the flower more, to be honest, but okay,
I'm
that's
a
fine.
female.
All right, okay. So Daisy, okay. Daisy lives locally in the area. She's in her late 30s. She had a beautiful home, maybe a young family. She loves gardening. She's passionate about nature. She loves to meet up somewhere, have coffee with her friends in a really welcoming place. She cares about the environment, biodiversity. She's got a bit of time now. Her kids are getting a bit older. She's got a little bit of extra money and she wants to invest in her garden. But she really wants to come to the local garden centre because she appreciates quality, experience, and wants to support a good local business. And the staff are just so lovely and they've got a great range. So she really needs ideas. She needs to get more knowledge, get some ideas and inspiration. She really needs a plan for redesigning her garden. She needs to know what flowers will work for her space. So she's looking for some inspiration so that she can create this beautiful, colourful garden that her and her family can enjoy for years to come and brings a feeling of serenity. So now we have a profile of a person. So when we go to create our content, now we're really clear on who we are speaking to.
I think I'll take off my costume now, will I? Will I take off my costume now?
Whenever you want. I quite like it, to be honest. So now that we're
think I'll take
clear
it off
on
now.
who we're speaking to, the next stage is right. How do we create content? So as I've already talked about, the most important thing when you're creating content is you're leading with the problem that your customer wants to solve. So again, we don't want to just jump in being like, oh, look, I've got this amazing landscaping service, or oh, look, we've got all the spring bulbs in. Take a few steps back. You need to first let your customer know that you understand what they need and you understand the problems that they're experiencing. Then you bring in your solution. Because remember, we're building awareness of our brand and we're building trust and connection with our potential customer. So when you're creating content, there's 3 big areas that I like to focus on to help you build that trust and connection, okay? So if we keep our content at the center of it all, okay? First, we have content that educates. Second, content that inspires. And third, content that builds connection. Okay? So let's look at our garden centre. Our educational content, okay? This is anything, our how-to tips. Okay? What plants
Are in season.
are in season. Okay? Anything here that teaches your audience something that they didn't know before they read the post. It doesn't have to be an entire course in landscape gardening. Something small like what way to put bulbs into the ground. Anything that imparts some knowledge to someone who doesn't know much about gardening from an expert is educational. This helps to position you as the expert gardener who has the knowledge and skills to help your customer. So anything that teaches your audience something is educational content, okay? Inspire. So we talked about the vision, the serenity, the end result. How do you sell that dream garden to someone to make them want to come in and go, right, give me the plants, give me the know-how, I want to do it, okay? You've got things that are going to inspire them like the before and after. So if you have done landscaping for other gardens and you have a beautiful result showing that, you can show, like, did you walk through here on the way in? Did you look around? Wow. I mean, what an impact that has, okay? Behind the scenes. of your space, showing the actual layout of the garden centre, okay? You know, details of the plants you have there. And we'll come into how beautiful photography and video can support that as well. Anything that's going to inspire them to want to create that vision, okay? And then connection, very important. When they're ready to buy, what's going to make them buy from you, okay? What's going to make them choose you over the garden centre down the road, okay? What's going to make them want to pick you? Showing, and this is so important if you're a small business owner, showing yourself and bringing yourself into your content as well, okay? This doesn't mean sharing what you have for breakfast every morning, but it can be making sure that you're showing your face and your voice. I know speaking on camera, and we'll talk about this, is something a lot of people dread, but it's so important. The more you do of it, the more connection you build with your audience. And anyone who does it a bit on their Instagram or anything like that, the more you do it, the easier it gets as well. It's just something you have to practice like anything else in business, you know. So it can be anything that builds connection. So bringing your face, your voice into it, a little bit of your story. What ignited your passion for gardening? What made you decide to open this garden centre, 10 years ago? Tell your story, okay? Okay, anything that builds personal connection, okay? So that when they go to the plants, they're not get the plants. They're not going to Aldi. When they go to the landscaping service, they're not ringing the local landscaper. They're coming to you because they want your help. Okay, focusing on these three things and making little ideas, making a document with little ideas that you have for all these three areas. And honestly, just rotate and rinse and repeat. And this is how you're going to keep building content that builds awareness of your brand and connection with your ideal customer. And the most important thing before I hand over to Joleen is, don't forget, the goal of all this in the end is to attract clients and customers and make sales. So always throughout your content, don't forget to talk about your offer, talk about your products and your services. So it doesn't mean advert after advert, but once you've given them the brilliant tips about how to plant your seasonal flowers or what plants to plant in full sunlight, at the very end say, are you redesigning your garden? Call into us to get some expert advice. Or we've got a great range of spring bulbs in stock in our online shop. Hit the link in the bio for more. Always come back to your call to action, talking about your offer. So never forget call to action. So you're always drawing them a little further along that journey to becoming your customer. Okay, so all of this is great, but it's really supported with strong visuals, whether that's a video or photography. So Joleen, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk to us a little bit more about that.
Cool. That's brilliant. And that's actually the huge foundation of where any visuals go from there, right? So a lot of people ask me, do I need a fancy camera, right? And this is a question I get all the time. And this is my job. I have the fancy camera, right? And the photos look absolutely brilliant. They're nice and sharp, lovely colours. But for most people, a smartphone is really, really good, right? You can take fantastic images, and it all basically comes down to the foundation of having a good story to tell and having something that's really interesting to put up there in the first place. So it doesn't really matter about the camera, it matters about what your message is. So that's the first thing, really. Mm-hmm. The other thing that would be really important to look at is, how do I take the best photos that I can using the equipment that I have? And a question that always, I suppose the next biggest thing really is the lighting that you have around you, okay? So I would always advise people, when they can, use what's available, and that is often the sunlight that's out there, natural light, right? Like, you step outside there, you've beautiful, gorgeous, white, natural light. You don't have these funny colours from maybe a blue light or an orange light that might be in a kitchen, for example, above a pass. Natural light is often just the most simple and beautiful light that you can use. Sometimes, like today, the sun shines in Ireland and we can get like big harsh shadows. So if you are in a day like that, pop over into the shade and you'll get a nice kind of diffused light as well. So that makes the photo really, really special. I photograph a lot of food, and my go-to is always to bring the plate of food just over to the window. And that's often the best, really.
Can I ask you a couple of questions with my customer hat on?
Oh yes, please.
Sorry, just get my... I haven't actually... You had the flowers, so I had to have my actual customer hat on. what about if you have to talk on camera? Because that's something
yeah,
I think
okay.
comes up a lot for people.
Yeah.
So any tips for kind of building confidence on
Yeah,
talking on
being
camera?
comfortable on camera, because video is really important, as we mentioned. And I think to get comfortable on camera, it really helps if you know what you're going to say. So like scripting out your words beforehand, writing a couple of points, practicing it maybe in the mirror. You know, I think that really, really helps. And I always script stuff, and I don't mind doing it a couple of takes, because that's the beauty of being able to edit something. And also being in the right frame of mind when you actually go to record these things. So it might be a case of, you know, stepping aside, taking a couple of breaths, just kind of calming down, getting into the zone. Or, you know, if you're in the middle of it and you get all kind of flustered, take a step back, relax, come back to it. And I think you're in a better presence then as well to be able to actually deliver something with authenticity, because it is really important to be authentic and to be yourself on camera, because people are buying from you and they're trusting that person that's there.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Is there anything, if you're taking photographs of like food or products, do you need to think about like the background or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely, because that's going to add into the story of what we're saying and what we're selling, I suppose, ultimately. So like going back into that garden centre example, like if you've got some nice, beautiful seasonal plants, it's in a lovely garden, there's a happy family in the background, or this idea of maybe a slide or something, it just kind of puts people into the frame. It's kind of putting them into the narrative of like, how would I look if I had that in my garden?
Yeah.
What would it look like, do you know? Same if you're in a restaurant and you've got like a nice cocktail and it's got this like little kind of accent of maybe the wallpaper in the background and this beautiful setting. It just kind of gives you this sense and place of space of where you are, but also like the background can complement or accentuate your area of focus as well. So like for example, if you have a dark plant, right? If you photograph it against a dark background, it's probably not going to like shine. So if you photograph it against maybe something that's a little bit lighter, that kind of accentuates it, that's definitely going to help your product. Give me another question. You're doing a great job there.
Does anyone else have a question? Is there anything else around?
Oh, do you know what we were going to say? I was going to talk a little bit about a couple of rules.
Yeah, I was going to say, are there any, like, I don't know the names for them because I'm not a photographer, but like the photography stuff, like, I don't know, like composition or whatever, like, is there any rules around those things?
Well, they're
like when you're setting up a
rules
photo,
are there to be broken.
When you set up a photo, like for some reason, like yours always look beautiful, and then mine, like there's like a shadow over half my face, or like I'm way over to the left, or you know. So
well, the shadow over half your face is now you know you go to natural light or
and I make sure the light isn't behind me, isn't it? It's kind of.
Okay, that's a good question actually. If
where's the light if I'm taking the photo?
Yeah, for example. So say if you wanted to video you talking now, what I would do here is I would say this is the main light source, the window here. So I would put the phone there looking at me, so the beautiful light is coming from here.
So the light's shining on me if I'm talking.
Shining on me and I look really good.
So basically if you're talking to the camera or taking a photograph, you want to make sure that you're facing towards the light.
The
light source isn't behind you. Otherwise you're a big shadow.
I think that's really nice. I mean, you can work around it the other way as well, where you have the light behind you. And what you can do is you can reflect light back into you using something like, you know, it could be as simple as a piece of tinfoil or a white card.
Oh, that's clever.
And it bounces light back.
Oh, right, I never thought of that.
Yeah, towards you. But I just talk a couple of composition rules that are really useful. Say this is your photo here, right? There's a rule called the rule of thirds, and if you divide an image in 2 horizontal lines a third of the way down and 2 vertical lines this way, you'll see that you come up with a 9-point grid. And if you place the main subject of your photo in one of these points, the composition actually looks really good. And you kind of think, oh, really, how does that work? But it actually just does. So, for example, if I have a landscape with some mountains here, oh, look at that, they're beautiful, and big clouds in the background.
You should be an artist, not a photographer.
And
it's
there's
beautiful.
the sun. Roughly, these are where I've put the lines of areas of interest. The mountains are here, not in the middle of the frame, but down the bottom. The sun is up the top left. And it just visually looks a little bit more interesting. And also, by putting your subject in these main areas, you allow a little bit of kind of blank or white space that is great for social media captions. Like it could be a title of like special offer, and here is our.
And that's a really good point. Have you ever tried to make a post where you're putting writing onto a photograph, and it's really hard to get the writing to stand out? So if you leave white space, it doesn't have to literally be white, but where the subject of your photograph isn't taking up that space, that leaves a lot more room for your words to stand out. Yeah. I'm taking off the hat now for a little while. It's okay. It's quite warm actually.
So does anyone else have any other questions in there in relation to photography and image making in particular, or have we kind of?
That's a great question.
That's a great question, yeah. So these days for social media, a lot of content is portrait. Because people just use their phones like this. They rarely go into landscape mode. But I would say if you're doing kind of short form video content, I would film it in portrait.
It really does depend. If you're making reels or Instagram stories or Instagram photos, portrait, which is up this way.
Yeah. If you're
the
making
biggest
anything
mistake
long,
people make is they film everything like this and then they put it up in a reel. And if you ever see the reel with the little video this big in the middle, it's because they filmed it like that instead of like that. Yeah. So you want, again, think about your customer. You want your image or your video to fill their screen, okay? So you want portrait, unless you're doing video for
long form video content, then I would go landscape, because a lot of people then are looking at it on their computer. Yeah. The other great thing that I would put in videos all the time is captions, because a lot of people just don't listen to the audio on their phone. They're on the bus or they're doing something else, and if you've got captions, it just grabs your attention. Plus, it reinforces the information too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can do this really easily if you're putting stuff on reels or stories on Instagram. There's a little function that adds captions, and if you're not, there's free apps that honestly transcribe what you're saying, because you're basically doubling your impact by adding captions. Yeah.
I think our time is probably up.
Probably well up, I'd say. Katie, yeah.
Oh, I just want to ask, what would be a good video
editing
editor
app? CapCut is fabulous. It's free to download. Really good, really powerful. You can get a pro version of it too, but the free version is phenomenal.
I use InShot. I don't know, is that?
Yeah, that's pretty good too.
Yeah, I use InShot, which is also, there's a free version. It's got a watermark on it, but it's not that expensive for the paid version. And I'm not a videographer, and I find it very easy to use. Does anyone want to ask anything else?
When you're taking photographs of a bedroom, let's say, I try to look at the four corners.
Yeah.
And I have, if there's a lampshade, I get the lampshade and I get the floor. But I always seem to get it crooked.
Okay.
One side is always crooked.
One side of the.
I could be, like the wardrobe or something is in my way, and I'm catching the wardrobe.
Okay.
But if I try not to catch the wardrobe, it's not straight.
Yeah, so I don't know what phone you're using, but I have an iPhone that I've got. It's a camera. Okay, so you probably shoot on the widest lens or widest angle possible, but often you get that kind of distortion in the camera automatically. So what you can do is you can actually in post-production kind of distort that. The iPhone basic editor has that application actually, where it'll basically where your walls are going like that, it'll kind of straighten them out like that. So I use that all the time actually, and that's probably what you need to do. But I can show you how to do that later.
I also find with businesses who are estate agents or interior designers, where you're taking pictures of big spaces, it can be really hard to capture the impact of a room when you're taking it all together. So what I often suggest as well is focusing on zones. Not necessarily from a photography point of view, but just from a content impact point of view. If you take pictures of one corner of a room that's, maybe the relaxation zone, and it can show off the detail a lot more, and it kind of draws the eye in as well. So obviously you have to take a picture of the whole room for kind of portfolio images and things, but also think about zeroing in on a portion of the room. It can be very impactful as well.
That's storytelling.
Yeah, exactly.
Really.
You're kind of drawing people into the story, which is what content marketing is all about, really.
Is videoing more popular? How do you get the followers then? Should you pay for adverts and reels?
So that's a really good question. So advertising, paid ads, has a big role in social media, but a big mistake that a lot of businesses make is they just skip to that because it's easier, because you're like, well, I could pay for ad space and that'll get the impact. But unless you focus on the stuff that we talked about, the content and your messaging and who you're talking to, what you're saying, you're going to lessen the impact of your ads, because it all comes back to your content. think about it, you can see the same ad. How often have you got sick of seeing the same ad come up again and again on your social media? Because if it's not the right ad and it's not targeted at the right person, it's not going to have impact, and you're going to spend money that you don't need to spend, and you're going to not get the results you want. So I would say there's a role for it, but focus on your content first. Content marketing is a slower growth than paid advertising, so they can often work together, but you're building brand awareness. So you would look at accounts that might have 10 times the followers you do, but they might be making far smaller portion of sales, because you can do a lot more with an audience of 200 who are really, really engaged and part of your community and follow your content regularly than 10,000 who just clicked follow one day because they saw a funny reel and don't even know what you do. Okay, so always focus on the value you're providing and the quality of your content. And remember, it does take time and consistency, one of the first words that came up, to get there with the content marketing, but it does pay off because you build that kind of loyal customer base. So yeah, there's a role for both.
I think people, just with doing videos, and you're saying that your presence, your video, it's more engaging, but can people get sick of it? You know, when people say, oh Jesus, here they
Well, not if you're giving them good information.
Exactly.
Like, that's the thing. If you're building that connection, and if you're getting customer trust, and you're giving them interesting things that they want to learn about, and guarantee they're going to come back to you.
People need to hear something. I mean, some studies say 7 times, some say 15. But before something has an impact, you need to see and hear that at least 7 times before it even registers. And think about how many accounts you follow and the small proportion of them that you actually see in your feed. And if you looked into your stats and saw your engagement, it might be 2-3% of your followers are actually seeing your content. So in your world, you're like, oh, I'm annoying people, I'm putting this out again and again, they're sick of it. But in reality, a lot of your audience haven't even heard it or seen it even once. Yeah. So that's one thing. You're not actually making people sick of you, because chances are they haven't even heard it yet. And the other thing is, it's all about knowing your audience. People who want what you're selling will never get sick of hearing from you about it. If they get sick of it, then they're not going to buy from you anyway. So if someone's following you and they're like, oh, she's showing us around another house, I'm not looking for a house, well, head off. So, because you're looking for people who are looking for homes. Or if you're selling vintage clothing, like, oh, she's always talking about sustainability and buying secondhand, I'm sick of that. Well, do you know what? Head off, so, because you're probably in the wrong place. And it can be hard for our egos as small business owners to lose followers sometimes. But remember, if they get sick of hearing you talk about your message to your core customer, then they're not your core customer. So you might sometimes lose followers with this, and it's hard, but you'll attract the right kind of followers, the people who are your people, your community, who actually want what you're looking for. And the clearer you are about that, ultimately, the better, because you attract the people who actually do want to hear from you, and they'll never get sick of you.
And can you go on too much? Like, are you supposed to be
like now? Look, I would say consistency is key, because if you are in a position where you can post 5-7 times a week, fantastic. But look, we're all busy. We all have businesses to go off and run, and lots of hats that we're wearing. So if 2-3 times a week is what's realistic for you, I would say be consistent with that. So frequency is great, consistency is better, because again, you don't want a spike of 2 weeks of activity and then flatlining. So if 3 times a week showing up in whatever way it works for you is manageable, I would stick with what frequency is consistency for you, yeah.
One quick question.
Absolutely.
In terms of marketing side of it, obviously you want to sell your product or your service. But the other side is businesses are finding it quite difficult to staff nowadays. Have many companies been coming to you to ask about a strategy to appeal, to a wider audience in terms of bringing in better supply staffing, or appealing as a company, as somewhere that somebody wants to work?
In terms of like more of a recruitment campaign?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. It's not something that I'm working with on any client at the moment, but it is certainly something that's a challenge right now, and the principles would really be the same, Like when you think about the values you have as a brand and what you're trying to communicate, a great place to work might be one of them. So, if you were expanding your cafe team and you wanted to paint a picture of it as a place to work, going back to the values, you do a profile in the same way you did a profile of your customer, you do a profile of your ideal team member as well, and how are you going to create the environment where they'd want to work, and how do you tell that story through behind the scenes, through video, through sharing your own journey and your passion, So yeah, I would say, as any communications campaign, the principles would be very similar, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's just about, and it was more, I guess, if companies are coming to you asking about
Oh, yeah.
that sort of
Not at the moment, but it is an interesting one. I wouldn't be surprised if they did start it, because obviously it is a challenge. Yeah.
Silence.
Thank you very much. You can find us both on LinkedIn and on Instagram, Joleen Cronin, Emer Harrington, and we're always happy to answer questions if you want to have a chat with us afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Obviously, I enjoyed it with all the questions.
Did you like the flower?
Have a look at Dr.